Welcome to Empowered by AI, the podcast for women entrepreneurs ready to harness AI to take their businesses to the next level. I'm your host, Michelle Muncie Silva, founder of Innovative AI Studios. You may have left corporate life to start this entrepreneurial journey, but you don't have to go it alone. Here, you'll find a supportive community of like-minded women and an invaluable thought partner each week, as my guests and I share actionable insights you can use right away. So let's dive in together. I am so happy to be able to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for creating the space and holding the space for this conversation. And thank you to all the listeners who are listening in today.
Yes, and I want you to take a moment to introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about what you're up to right now. And I want to dive into questions because I really want to hear your perspective.
Okay, fair enough. So, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are listening to this. My name is Dr. Cecilia Dones, and I am the founder and chief data officer of 3 Standard Deviations. So, this is a consultancy where we help organizations as well as people figure out how to do this AI thing. So, specializing in AI transformations, not only from a perspective of end to end delivery, but also from the perspective of culture and psychology. So, yes, I'm very much worried about the platforms, technology, but I'm equally, if not more, worried about how do we do this in a way that respects people's dignity and allows everyone to flourish.
And you talk a lot about turning that kind of mysticism into mastery when it comes to AI. So I'm wondering, what's a common myth that you wish more women business owners would stop believing?
Okay. Maybe this one's a little bit of a, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's more of a controversial comment. A myth, I think, that could be very helpful to dispel is that if I don't use it, this won't affect my business.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
we can quote our favorite statistics from whichever research we want about utilization of AI adoption amongst genders. It has been noted that women are falling behind for numerous reasons. So, a very clear reason is we are still recovering from changes in the labor workforce as a result of the pandemic. A lot of women left. They are still coming back. And so that's a good explanation. When we look at the younger end, there's still disparities when it comes to the hard STEM sciences. And so there, again, there's a gap there. And then also, depending on which sector you're in, how much exposure you get naturally within your professions. If you have a knowledge worker type of role, then yes, you are more likely to be more exposed to opportunities to utilize AI as opposed to if you're less of a knowledge worker or if you are more of a customer facing worker, you may have fewer opportunities. So there is a gap. Ignoring that gap and not learning how to figure this out for yourself and for your organization does not make it go away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have talked to a lot of trainers, people who are facilitating workshops. And so I'm wondering about people who will attend, they will learn,
Mhm.
but then stall when it comes to implementation, excuse me. I'm wondering, what's your process for breaking down change into something that's manageable, non-intimidating, especially when it comes to teams with limited tech experience? Because I think we have to recognize that stall and start chipping away at it.
Yeah. So it's, I smile at this and because a very good strategy session is a very good strategy session, especially for teams who may have limited tech experience. First of all, maybe that's another myth I need to bust right now. If you are using email, if you have ever used a GPS or sat nav or used anything related to your car and trying to navigate, you are using AI.
If
It
your
is the
car
same.
automatically brakes, guess what?
Yes, exactly. You are utilizing these AIs. And so maybe it's more important to create a distinction. So the mysticism that tends to happen around technologies is that when it's first coming out, first salient, first, oh, what is this? How do I use this? It can feel almost like magic in some ways. And that's what we typically brand with the new term. And in this case, it's AI. once it becomes ubiquitous, once we expect, of course, the car is going to break when we need it to. Of course, the sat nav or the GPS is going to help us navigate a new city or figure out where the next parking spot is. Of course, once those things become expectations, it becomes ambient technology. So that's a little bit of a technical term, but it becomes a part of our lived experience. And so I like to dispel that particular myth that I don't use AI. I have limited tech experience because it's language that I argue creates an othering. Oh, I'm not one of them. Oh, I'm
Mm,
different from them. Oh, I am not that technology savvy. Oh, not for me. It's a self limiting belief that holds us back as leaders when we want to really implement change. And so, first, yes, we all use technology. And yes, we all have different experience levels of utilizing that technology. Some of us a little bit more experienced than others. So, first,
mhm,
that. The second point I would make is that I, especially for organizations that maybe are expressing a little bit of concern, maybe a little bit of trepidation, maybe a little bit of fear because of perceived limited tech experience, or maybe you have too much tech experience. So you have all sorts of technology left and right that doesn't talk to each other. So it's too complicated and complex. In both scenarios, I actually start with stakeholders talking about, what do I want my customers, my consumers, what do I want them to think, feel, or do? And
mhm,
just talk about those words. Talk about the cognition. So, what do we want them to think of my brand, think of my business, think of my service? What do I want them to feel? Oh, when they think of my brand, they think of nostalgia, or they think about joy, or they think about the togetherness, or they think about relaxation, whatever it is. Or what do I want them to do? Oh, I want them to think of my brand next time they need product X, or I want them to think about my brand when the next time they need service Y. And in all of that, I have not said any technology words. I have not used any acronyms related to technology and AI, starting from a place of strategy, starting from a place of how am I serving my customer? How am I serving my consumer? And framing it in terms of, what do I want them to think? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? Is a great way to create a map of the potential opportunities where technology may help or actually may hinder and overcomplicate. So,
mhm,
starting there is a great way of, one, getting alignment amongst leadership, amongst those things, because sometimes there's misalignment. And then, two, once you already have that, it gives you an idea of, oh, okay, we have a lot of think. We don't have a lot of do. Oh, is this a problem for us? Do we like it being this way? Or is this part of our strategy? If not, okay, how do we change it? So figuring out those things at a strategic, executive strategic level, and then working with potential experts. Maybe it is from the outside, or maybe it does come from the inside. So the other maybe myth I wanted to bust is that, oh, no one inside my organization can doesn't have the bandwidth or the curiosity or the skill set to deal with AI. So I am going to have to hire the most experienced, most expensive, most consultants out there. And that is a choice. And if you are a very large enterprise organization with a multinational, global, lots of moving pieces, and that complexity is so high and the risk of doing it wrong is so high, yes, consultants can be quite helpful. If you're not one of those, and maybe you're a small, medium business, or maybe you're a regional business, and you're just trying to figure out, where can I unlock those moments of value to service my customer and consumer, maybe that's the
mhm,
opportunity to look inside and say, I was actually curious about this, because it's really coming from a place of curiosity in your culture. That's how you're going to break down this technology AI adoption challenge into meaningful steps. The analogy I like to use is that, in ways, sometimes I feel like I am, and these are very much experts in their field, sometimes I feel like a personal trainer. And the reason why I say that is, personal trainers, those of us, it's warm weather right now. There's going to be fall weddings, winter weddings, all sorts of celebrations and gatherings coming up. And oh, goodness, there's always opportunity to lose the last 2 kilos, the last 5 pounds, whatever it is, so you can fit better into the whatever clothes you want for the occasion, or maybe you want to go on holiday and you want to fit better into your clothes. So yes, you can hire the personal trainer who may have multiple degrees and know all the answers of what weights to lift and what cardio to do and all the things to make sure that your body's moving in the right way. You may hire the nutritionist, who's a different kind of specialist who knows all about the fuel and nutrition that you need to ingest in your body. So that way you can actually perform all the movement that your personal trainer is trying to do. And then you can also have the wellness coach that can bring that all together and also help you manage your stress levels and deal with mindfulness, because what's happening inside your world, both professionally and personally, has impact on your ability to lose weight. You can hire all of these really brilliant, very educated, very experienced specialists. However, unless you actually go to the gym, unless you actually put the cake down, unless you actually say, you know what, I'm not going to do emails at 9 p.m. at night. Until you do all of those things, nothing will change. If your goal is losing the last 2 kilos, losing the last 5 pounds. So, as an organization trying to adopt technology, adopt AI, figure out what AI even means to you, your business, and to your customers, yes, experts are great. They help to amplify and accelerate in areas where you may be struggling as an organization. But first, we have to figure out the mindset and culture of the organization with the strategy of how you want to service your customer, such that when the information comes, when the roadmaps are built, your organization is already more than primed and ready to take on those mini challenges, breaking it down into little steps, little rituals, little behaviors you can do every single day to increase that AI adoption, increase the value you can create for your customers and consumers utilizing these technologies.
It only is of value in so much as you are willing to take the action.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I'm also wondering, I was looking at some of your writing, and in your latest essay, you challenge this myth of adaptability as a solo trait, right? So, what role do you think that adaptability in community plays?
So, a little bit more background about me. So, I do have a little bit of a social sciences background. So, I came into this technology data type space because I've always been obsessed with telling stories about people using data. And so, everything in my toolkit has always been a result of, oh, I want to understand that person better. I want to understand those people better. How can I better understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and tell their story in a way that respects their perspective of the world? So I've been always very obsessed with trying to tell stories, but then on top of that, understand the diversity of perspectives, the different ways of doing things, so different cultures. And because of that, I'm very much interested in understanding the collective as opposed to the individual. So solo versus the group. And I think living and working in the US for most of my adult life, the result of that is that there's all this wonderful reinforcement of, yes, if I put enough work, I can become the expert. If I pull myself, I don't have boots, but if I did, I could pull the bootstraps. I've never seen them before. Maybe someone can educate me on what bootstraps are, but I can pull myself up by bootstraps and get this done by myself. And that's great. And that's self empowerment and that willingness to take the action that has, I will openly admit, that has helped me, that mindset, to take risks where I would normally not. So good, great. However, I cannot be an expert in everything. I openly admit that. And I also am not for everyone. I actually have a workout t shirt that says that because I can't specialize in everything. And that's okay. But if I want to reach these big, lofty, ambitious, audacious goals, and if I can't be an expert in everything, how do I solve this gap? How do I close the delta? Oh, I need people. I need community. From an evolutionary biology perspective, we are gregarious creatures. We really don't do well when we're by ourselves. and very personal and visceral experience we've all had as a result of that experiment. We all have our own stories that are as equally valid around our experience with the pandemic a few years back. So for some of us, that meant isolation, that meant being alone, that meant being only by yourself. And we have personal experiences of what it's like to be by ourselves and be solo. So we have evidence that we do much better at survival when we're in groups. We have evidence that, oh gosh, for many of us, being alone, it does not feel good. And it has also second order and third order effects when it comes to our health, wellness, mental health as well. And then on top of that, and again, I'm very open to being educated on this. I don't know anyone who's the super expert in everything. So knowing that I cannot be an expert in everything and I cannot be for everyone, oh goodness, I humbly admit I must have help. And so that's where the community comes in. And especially now when there's perceived, and the reason why I say perceived is depending on your lens of the world, you can create debates around it, but the perceived uncertainty, the perceived ambiguity, the perceived unknowing what's going to happen next, both at the global, country, individual, community level, can make individuals feel not so good. And so how do we get through this? We get through it together. And I firmly believe that it takes only one yes to change the trajectory of your life. So you have to keep saying yes. The corollary to that comment is, who are you saying yes to? You must be talking to someone. Yourself, another person, your community. And yes, you can pull up your bootstraps and also practice your self-efficacy and self-agency. Yes, of course. However, to reach the audacious goals that we have, those visions of ourselves that are much bigger than us as individuals, it cannot be done without community. It cannot be done without a group.
And I think for so many solopreneurs, they're used to wearing every hat, right? We're putting all of this on ourselves. So I can see how community could be incredibly vital. And I'm also wondering, from the perspective of having a team of one, how do you think solopreneurs can best capitalize on AI to, say, for example, build their own data team?
So when it comes to parts of your business, especially if you're a solopreneur, and yes, you're wearing multiple hats, but I would question, are you doing everything equally as well? Maybe on
Right.
the long run, yes, of course, because your business is viable. But in the short run, it's a daily challenge of trade-offs. Am I going to be the best CFO today? Maybe not. Oops, maybe my books. I need to make sure my accountant has my receipts. That might be a good thing. Or am I going to be the best marketer or salesperson? Okay, maybe I should have responded to that potential client leads a little bit sooner, but maybe I didn't. Am I the best product person? There's always going to be trade-offs.
Yep.
So yes, wearing multiple hats. Where I would start with augmenting myself with technology as a solopreneur, if there are pieces of your business that you've created routines around already. So it's not exploratory work. We haven't done this before. This is an experiment kind of thing. But no, starting from a place of, oh gosh, I constantly send the same batch of emails. Or I do personalize my emails. I make sure that I look up I'm making it up. I look up the weather of the zip code of the potential client just to mention the weather because that's the way I like to personalize or whatever detail. And so I personalize it in that way. Anything where you have a process that you can explain to maybe an intern if you had one, that could be a place to start thinking about, oh, okay, is this the way I can scale by augmenting myself with this kind of automation with a process I understand very well. And I understand, more importantly, the inputs, what I put into the process, and I understand what good looks like on the outputs. I think a mistake a lot of us make when we're first very excited and we want to use the AI and we want to let it do all the things for us is that, okay, the AI produces something. There's an output now. Is it good? Is it meeting a standard? Is it meeting your business standards? We haven't thought through of what good looks like yet. And the reason why I call this out is that At the end of the day, if your potential customer, your lead, or your current customer receives an output and maybe it's going to harm the relationship, or maybe it's just a little bit off-putting, do they say, "Oh, did you use AI? Oh, huh. Okay. Ah, silly us. A mistake. It was a little bit of a faux pas, but it's fine." No, they don't blame the machine. They blame you. And so, therefore, at the end of the day, the accountability lands with you as a solopreneur. So that's why I would rather create guardrails and maybe more scaffolding and infrastructure around initial use cases, especially as you're a solopreneur. And as you build more experience and as you gain confidence that, oh, okay, I have a good understanding of the inputs. Okay, I have a good understanding of what good outputs look like for my business. Yes, create experimentation. Do it in a sandbox environment so there's no potential harm. It's in a sandbox, so it's safe. But I would say the initial use cases should be around processes that you understand very well.
Mhm. And speaking of understandings that are vital, I'm wondering your thoughts on what you think small business owners should know about some of these upcoming regulations. I know there's a lot of controversy, for example, around the UK Online Safety Act. How should people start preparing? Even if we're based outside of the UK, what should we be looking for?
So there has always been regulation. For those of us who have been in the business for a little bit longer, we may be more familiar with the bigger regulations like GDPR. We may be more familiar with the regulations like CCPA, CPRA. We may be more familiar with the EU AI Act. Those are the biggie ones. In the US, there's additional state level regulations, but California tends to drive in terms of the most comprehensive views of those things. The reason why this UK Online Safety Act, which actually started in 2023, so it's been around for a bit, but the enforcement mechanism is more recent and it's rolling. The challenge there is that the jurisdiction can reach towards organizations, even if you're not physically in the UK, even if the majority of your consumers are US consumers or other market consumers, if there is a reasonable expectation that your services can touch UK consumers, that's where things start to get applicable. And where it gets a little bit even more tricky is there are expectations around making sure that certain content is dealt with age gating. So understanding how old the individual is. Good news, we already have precedents of this, right? So in the US, those of us who have experience with e-commerce, if you ever worked on an alcohol beverage brand, for example, and you have a website, we have to have age verification. So not so bad. We have some experience with this. So that's good news. Where does it get a little bit more tricky? There is a component of the legislation which is called legal but harmful content. And so that's where it gets a little bit tricky. What do we mean by legal but harmful? Legal means, well, technically no litigation and no one should be coming after you as a business, but harmful. And so this is where there's subjective interpretations. And this is where there's going to be all sorts of conversations and litigations and regulations and advocacy and policy that needs to be further developed to address the definition of what do we actually mean by legal and harmful. This is not to scare you. I'm just giving you all this information as a high level overview of that regulation, of why it matters in a different way from more traditional regulation. If I am a business that is interested or is exposed to the potential regulation, it's the basic data governance that we've always had as best practice. Do you know where your data is? Do you know who has access to this data? Do you know what the data elements are? Can you delete this data? What are the procedures around the data deletion, data access, all of these things about the data itself? Traditional foundational data governance will help you go a very long way in terms of all of these changing regulations. So if anything, this is actually a great time. If this is all too much and there's too many things going on, I would focus on, okay, this is a good time to shore up our data foundations, our data governance, our data management. So again, Are we keeping any PII? So are we keeping any personal identifiable information? Are we keeping any healthcare information? So there is regulation here in the US around that. Are we keeping any sensitive data that may lead to trouble later on? Do we know where it is? Do we know how to handle it? Do we know where our data comes from? Many organizations not only produce data, either through sensors or there's no value exchange with their customers, but they may be utilizing third-party data. So they may be buying data from a data broker. Okay, do we know where that data is really coming from? Can we trust that data? The challenge here, I would say, is the regulation will never catch up to the changes in what's possible with the technology. And so organizations have to become radically clear when it comes to regulation and maybe ethics. Are we just going to go to the letter of the law as it stands today, which is great, compliance is good? Or are we going to do something else that builds trust with our consumers? And what is that agreement are we going to have with that consumer? How are we going to demonstrate that trust we have with that consumer? The answers will look very different from organization to organization, but it's a choice that has to be made.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That does. And I'm wondering, you hinted at it just a minute ago, but I have started to invite my guests to throw down a gauntlet for the listeners, put in a challenge. So let's say that one of our listeners today only has an hour a week to work on data, to work on AI. How should she spend it for the biggest impact? That's my invitation to you to throw down a challenge to the listeners about how they can best capitalize on moving forward.
Okay. I'm thinking about the pie and the pie of time. But first, I would go in order of operations and I would take the time to do what makes sense for you. So you don't have to hit it all. There's no extra internet points if you get all of them, but I would go in this order. The first thing I would do is, again, review my business goals and strategies. What do I want my customers to see, think, feel, and do? The reason why I say that is, again, the technology helps to accelerate or augment those capabilities to build those experiences. And we do not start with the technology first. We always start with strategy. So keeping that salient and reviewing that at all times, every single week, very good. The second thing is every single one of us, because AI exists pretty much everywhere in most of our tools at this point, I would take a good 20 minutes or maybe even half the hour. Whatever AI is already embedded within your stack, already embedded with your tool within your tool. So if you're using Canva, guess what? You can activate AI within Canva. If you are in a large enterprise and you're part of the Azure stack, and so Microsoft, and so you have Copilot available to you, use that. The reason why is that your teacher for AI, for technology, will never come from a textbook, will never come from an expert telling you this is how it works. It comes from your lived experience. So investing in yourself to take the time to utilize the tools that are already readily available to you. Yes. The third item I would say is I would ask people, and I say this because every organization I've ever been in, no matter how large, how small, there is always some version of shadow IT, shadow analytics, shadow AI, people doing things on the side that, yes, it's outside of governance. And yes, it is all sorts of bad and includes risk for the organization, but it happens. I suspect in every organization, there's shadow AI. Oh, I really like using ChatGPT because that's what I use at home, or I really love using Perplexity because that's what I use at home. Let me just quickly do this. The reason why I say ask people inside of your organization is that there might be new tools and new use cases for you to potentially experiment. And also, as a leader, I always encourage helping to create that psychological safety inside of an organization to talk about these things. So spending a little bit of time talking about, hey, how are you using any new tools? Are you using any new tools? And maybe even a more interesting question is, oh, there's so many new tools. Which tools are you no longer using? Get curious about that. I think is a great way to learn about the ecosystem and also simplify the learning process for yourself by leveraging your network, leveraging your collective, leveraging the community to learn from others. And then if you have any additional time beyond that, I would say of all the challenges you have, I would actually figure out a small problem, a small annoyance you have in your workday. Oh gosh, I really hate it when this particular I received this particular note and it's always very discombobulated, so I end up spending way more time trying to reconfigure it. Or when this happens, it causes a cascade of additional activities that I really don't want to do. Figure out whatever that small annoyance is and then think through, gosh, could I apply technology to this process to help alleviate this frustration that I have in the office? The reason why I say this is that experimentation to try to solve a real problem will teach you so much more about how to actually create value inside of your organization utilizing technology and AI, more so than any compendium long list of use cases you can get from a consultant or from someone from the outside. It's your lived experience, your challenges that you experience in your organization, in your role, that will actually teach you more about what the tools can do and what they cannot do. So those are the 4 things. Start with strategy, play with the tools that you already have because they're already there. So you might as well learn how to utilize them. Ask people what they're using, what they're not using, so you can leverage that community to learn from others. And then if you have extra bonus time, try to solve a real problem yourself in leveraging technology.
Dr. Dones, we are all the better for having hung out with you and learned from you. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to Empowered by AI. If today's episode sparked ideas, don't wait. Follow the link in the show notes to visit innovativeaistudio.com and download your free resource created to help you put today's insights into practice. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes packed with more tips, tools, and inspiring stories. Until next time, stay empowered and keep innovating.